Hello everyone, welcome back to my garage. As promised, we are back here working on the MAZDASPEED 3. To give you a little more background on this vehicle, I know in the last video I said that I bought it a few years ago. I actually looked and I bought this car April 28th of 2019. I've had this car pre-COVID. I had a friend of a friend that wanted to get rid of it and I had the extra cash and I basically picked it up sight unseen. And I have yet been able to drive it. Since I've purchased this car, I did all the fluids in it, replaced the fuel pump, a new plug. I've changed the MAF sensor, cam position sensor, crank position sensor. I checked and set the electrical timing, and for some reason still the car will start right up and die instantly. I haven't been able to diagnose the issue yet and gonna just keep digging because I want to drive this thing. With my continued research on YouTube University, I've gone through and looked at videos of checking the mechanical timing and also the condition of the VVT gear on the cam and the timing chain health. So given the amount of work I've already done on this thing, I think the next step is to finally pull that valve cover, double check the mechanical timing, and verify the timing chain and the VVT sprocket and cams are all still in working condition. So here's where we are currently. Before I abandoned this thing, I pulled the battery. That's been on a tender. The intercooler has been pulled, some of the trim pieces, and I've also stuffed all the open piping with rags to make sure no dust, dirt, critters get caught in there. I did do a little bit of cleaning off this valve cover. I want to make sure all that surface is clean before I pull that to keep debris out of it. I didn't think about pressure washing the engine bay when I had all the stuff out last week. So I just cleaned it real quick with some degreaser, a brush, and some compressed air. So I think I got it clean enough. I could start pulling some of the wiring harness away from this valve cover and get this thing removed and check inside. All right, so first thing we're gonna do is remove all the hardware that's holding all this wiring harness in place and get everything out of the way. I'm at the other house, so I got the good tools here, so this shouldn't take very long. Able to see right here, looks like at one point that chain was hitting the valve cover. That points to VVT failure. I'm not sure, that seems like it's okay. I'm not sure how tight that's supposed to be, but the videos I've seen, they were a lot looser than that. All right, so I think the next step is to pull off the high pressure fuel pump and top plate that it mounts to over here to expose the ends of the cam that the timing tool slots into. All right, now to verify we're at top dead center. All right, we are at top dead center. All right, it looks like this cam lines up, this cam sits lower and it won't slide into that. So I'll have to check and see if there's a different tool, if I have the wrong one, and yeah, see what else I can check while I have this apart. All right, change of shirt, it's the next day. At the end of the day yesterday, I got the engine in top dead center and installed the alignment plate for the timing on the cams. And it wasn't quite lining up. What I found out was I was on top dead center on the intake stroke and not on the compression stroke. So I just had to rotate the engine assembly another 360 degrees to get on the compression stroke top dead center. The alignment plate also came with a pin to screw into the block that locks the crank at top dead center as well. So I installed that pin, rotated the engine till I was at top dead center on the compression stroke, and when I fit the cam plate again, the intake cam still wasn't lining up. That tells me that this engine was a little bit out of time on the intake. Hopefully not enough to do any damage. This is an interference engine, so if it was enough out of time, the valves will come in contact with the piston. It was only maybe 1 tooth or less out of time. So let me turn you guys back around. So when I had the engine in the correct orientation, this pin was lining up in the slot on the cam here. Show you that. But this one was slightly off. So in order to retime this, the way the manual would tell you, you would have to remove this motor mount, both of these reservoirs, the wheel, serpentine belt, and all these pulleys and tensioners, just to be able to get to this bolt right here to be able to tighten the VVT gear on the cam. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I did it the jank way. I was able to loosen this gear, lock the engine in top dead center, get this plate locked back in place, and tighten this VVT gear back up. So everything should be in the correct time now. Your two lobes for cylinder 1 are gonna be pointing at each other in a 45-degree. Plates in place, the locking pins in place for the crank. All right, so let's go ahead and throw all this back together. So because I removed the valve cover, I will add some more gray RTV to the valleys on each side of that cam mount, and also where the mating surfaces for the timing cover. If your magnetic spark plug socket is pulling off, staying on the spark plug when you're trying to tighten them, you can jam a little piece of plastic or a towel to keep it from separating. All right, and instead of installing the original coil packs, I decided to order some new coil packs, and these are from NP Boosted. Adds a little bit of flair to the engine, don't you think? Later on, if I get this thing running right and start doing some other modifications to it, I'll probably end up repainting this valve cover. Not sure if I'll go with a standard wrinkle black or do something a little more wild. All right, I'm gonna continue buttoning up what I can here until we get to the point where I'm ready to install the next modification to this engine. All right, and this is where we're at in the current state of the wiring and getting this thing back together. Got all the connections plugged back in. I got a new silicone adapter for this cold air intake. Coil packs all in. I rewrapped some of the wiring harness with this cloth loom tape. Areas where the wire was kind of exposed and that cheap plastic loom stuff was chipping off. So everything is back in its rightful place, except for everything around the high pressure fuel pump. And the reason why I left it out is because before I can install it, I've had some parts in the top of my closet waiting for over 2 years for this day. Finally send them home. I'm pumped you guys are here to motivate me to finally get this done. So here's the high pressure fuel pump. What you guys didn't see is me removing the pump from the body that mounts it to the cylinder head at the cam lobe. What it takes are these reverse e-torques. With the socket I have, I had to grind it down at a taper, but the real star of the show is right here. So what we have here is Cork Sports high pressure fuel pump internals and the install kit. And over here we have new hardware and all the O-rings and seals compatible with E85. The MAZDASPEED 3 in stock form is already nearing the limit of what its fuel duty cycle can handle. So even just throwing on a short ram or cold air intake and doing a tune really puts you at risk of running lean. So everyone recommends as one of the first mods you do to this platform is to upgrade the high pressure fuel pump. So in addition to upgrading the internals of the fuel pump, I decided to future-proof it and make it compatible with E85. So let's get these parts installed in their rightful home and see if we can get this car started and running for the first time in 6 years. I tried to get this pump oriented in the vise to where you could see all the areas I'll be working on. What I'm going to start with is this fuel line right here. It takes T25 security Torx bits, the one that has the little hole in the middle. So hopefully these don't give me too hard of a time. Perfect. The only video I've seen of this rebuild, the guy was standing pretty far from the camera, so I'm hoping to give you guys a closer view, a little more clear, so you'll have a better idea of what this looks like if you end up doing it yourself. Alright, that seal was in there pretty good. So I'll set this aside. Now we'll work on this end cap right over here, and it uses those same security Torx. Rock this back and forth. There we go. There'll be a little fuel left in here. Looks like there's a little spring washer and piece in there. Next will be this top section with the plug. I believe it's a 32 millimeter, which I do not have, so I will be using this extra large crescent wrench. Oh, I didn't know if I was gonna pull this thing out of the vise. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for, the actual internals. Now to remove this part, we'll be using an 18 millimeter deep socket. See if I can do it from this orientation. Oh. Someone's alarm's going off. Now this part's removed. Now let's get all the parts over to the bench and clean everything up and lay everything out to start replacing all the seals. Now that everything is laid out on the bench and somewhat organized, I have all the parts laid out with their corresponding new seals and components. So what we will be starting with is the housing right here. Mine looks pretty clean. There doesn't seem to be any noticeable debris. So I'm just going to do a quick spray out with brake cleaner and start by replacing this seal. I got a little bucket set off screen to spray the parts into. This didn't take much. Now that all that's clean, grab my pick tool, remove this O-ring, pretty crusty. Put all your O-rings aside, all the old ones, in a specific place so you don't mix them up. Just work on one part at a time and discard the old parts right away. So here we have our new high pressure fuel pump housing O-ring, and it recommends you just have a little cap of oil like I have right here and get a little bit of lubricant on this O-ring before installing. Now that housing is done, next we'll be working on the fuel feed and return line. From the factory, this internal seal is plastic that degrades with using E85. So we'll be removing this internal filter and also replacing this O-ring as well. They give you this coarse thread screw to screw into this old fuel filter to remove it. And then use a set of pliers or channel locks to kind of rock it back and forth and remove the old filter. If it starts getting loose, just screw it in a little bit more. All right, I think we got most of it. There's the outer metal part of the filter. I think the plastic portion of it is still inside. Yeah, I just sprayed some carb cleaner in here, put my finger over this hole and that plastic piece. This is the part that degrades from using E85. Good thing we're swapping that out. They give you a new fuel feed filter. It's hard to say. They actually give you a spare, I guess, just in case you mess up or if you want to replace the filter down the line. So they recommend just placing it in here, getting it snug with your finger, and then putting it on a hard flat surface and just pressing it in, nice and flush. Now we will replace this O-ring. Try not to stab your finger. Goes in the bin. You have your fuel feed return O-ring. A little bit of oil. Now that that's clean and our housing's clean, we can reinstall. Like a glove. And they are kind enough, rather than using the Torx bits again, they give you 4mm socket head Allen screws. I think the torque spec on these was 5 Newton meters, but I'm just going to use a stubby ratchet, tiny little torque. We will next move on to this spill valve. So you have 2 O-rings on this one. It says to get a small socket, something that supports this inner plastic. You will be placing it down and pressing down, holding onto the nut. The end goal is, you see these 2 halves of this washer. By putting pressure on this, you don't want to touch this pin. So you're going to support around it, push this nut down, which will reveal those 2 half washers, and you'll be able to pull them out. So I think I broke it loose a little bit. I just grabbed the connector snugly and the nut snugly and just twisted by hand, and that freed up this portion. I can press down, grab a little pick tool, and now these little washers come out. Now you'll grab the 2 ends like before, and you can twist apart and this will separate. And now we will just spray these with the carb cleaner, and then we can replace the O-rings. Remove the O-rings before you clean them, just in case there's any debris caught in the seal channel. Now we're clean, ready for the new O-rings. We'll start with the internal oil. Now the external, so not only are these new O-rings, but they're also a compound that won't break down when running 85. So you're getting 2 birds stoned at once. All right, now that everything's all lubed up, you just push them together, doing the twist method again. And now this groove is visible. Now these get installed kind of opposite to each other. So one side's rounded, one side's slanted, and you see the round sides here, slanted sides there, and they fit into each other like this. What you'll do from there is push down. So next, there are these little bits over here that you need to be extra careful with. You have these 3 components here. So they go together like this. So tappet end on that side, and the spring is sandwiched in between the 2. Let's clean these up very carefully. Spring you want to spray very carefully. You don't want that flying around. And the tappet. Alright. And how they recommend putting this together. This piece goes in, then your spring, then you have this part on top, and that's assembled. And now you have to fish it down into the bottom there. I have a small set of needle nose pliers that helps. I have these little surgical pliers. Seems pretty fitting for this. So with this assembled, you're just going to drop it in there. And now this spill valve can go back on. For now, I'll just tighten this by hand. We will clock it in the right orientation and torque it down once we get it back on the vise. But essentially, you want to line it up with where it mounts to the housing. So this plug, you'll rotate it slightly counterclockwise like that. So when you do torque this down, you are directly in line with your housing. So we'll leave this right here until we mount it to the vise and can finish tightening it, and put that aside. Now we can work on this mechanical damper. The one that they showed in the video, this was all black. Mine looks pretty clean. This is how it came out of my housing. But we'll go ahead and take the rest of it apart and get it cleaned up. You have to get a flathead screwdriver, and in this opening right here, you will put the flathead in there and kind of twist to pry that out. And then that gives you this retaining ring, this other mechanical damper, and then the rest of the housing with that O-ring. We will clean all these pieces up and get them reassembled. All right, now all those components are clean. Again with the oil. We will reinstall the mechanical damper, install this ring. This ring doesn't go on all the way. Lay it on a flat surface, press it in, and you're gonna press it in until the bottom edge of this taper is flush with this lip, just like that. Now in here, the same in reverse. So this retaining ring goes in, then your damper, then your lock ring, and then your wave washer. And new seal is on. This gets reinstalled, and once again they provide you with new hardware, the same 4mm bolts, torqued to the same spec. All right, now we can set this aside, turn our attention to the star of the show, high pressure fuel pump internals. So we have a new piston housing, seal screw, a piston X-ring. So from here, we will be removing this old piston and this thing, very gunky. And then your thumb, so you push that and relieve the tension on this retainer. If you're replacing all the internals, then you don't need to be as gentle. If you're just replacing seals, they want you to use a flathead and be gentle removing the old tappet. You'll wedge it in this slot and rock it back and forth to raise this tappet right here. And then you should be able to just pop that out. And then the whole piston will come out this direction. And pop the spring off. Now there's an outer seal, there's an inner seal. That one's removed. Now we can go through, clean this. This is probably the dirtiest part. There we go. Very dirty in there. So it's a good thing that we're going through all this. All right, now you can see the bottom of it. There we go. Let's replace this X-ring very carefully. So you can use the pick tool to get it back into position. So what I ended up doing is kind of shoving it in an angle, using the pick tool to lock the top of the seal in, and I use a screwdriver to come in from the backside to push the loop hanging down up into the groove. Now we got that seated properly. Now we'll move on to the housing seal. Roll that on from the top. Now they say to go through and give all this a little bit of a lube. That's installed, and now this is where this install tool comes in handy. The spring, tappet, and retainer. A little bit on this spring as well. Press the spring back on. If you purchase the install tool, I believe this one might come with it. Some come separately. So you'll see that there's a groove on here. So this tappet with this open end is going to slide right into that groove. Like so. And then just like how you took the old one off, you'll slide this into the tappet and retainer, and then this goes into this spacer, and then from there they say tap with the handle end of a screwdriver, something soft. Okay, so don't do it on a wooden bench. I ended up setting this on the concrete on the ground and doing it like that with the handle of the screwdriver, and that seemed to push the tappet down far enough to lock this in place. And from there you'll just push this back, put tension back on that, and your piston go right back in, just like that. All right, and now that this is reassembled, we can now screw it back into the housing. Let's go hand tight for now. Let's go get this thing back in the vise. All right, we have the fuel pump secured back into the vise, and we'll be torquing down the internals to 40 foot-pounds with that 18mm. And then now we'll be tightening this. So once we tighten this down, we will be close to straight in line with your mounting base. Now we can remove this thing from the vise. Now we can install this high pressure fuel pump back into its housing. In addition to all the other new hardware Corksport provides, they also provide new mounting bolts for the high pressure fuel pump, so you don't have to use those reverse e-Torx bits anymore. You can use a standard 5mm Allen. Let's go get this thing installed. All right, let's catch you guys up here. High pressure fuel pump is installed. The fuel line that connects underneath it was giving me a a little bit of a hard time. Connected the rest of these hoses. Got the intake mounted. There's still one nut at the bottom that I have to connect down there. So now all that's installed. All that's left to do is install the new mass airflow sensor, finish mounting the intake, mount the intercooler, and put the battery in. And I think we should be able to start this thing. Give you an idea how long this car's been sitting. This is the keychain I have on it from SEMA when Tanner Fox brought his Guaczilla GTR. I don't know where you are, Tanner Fox, but I hope you're doing well. All right, everything's tight. I'm gonna get my dogs out of the garage, open the door, and see if this thing starts. All right, I think we're finally ready to try and start this thing and see if I mess it up even more. I know the fuel in here is pretty old. I probably should try to drain it and replace it, but I really want to see if this thing will even start first. Wish me luck. Took a while, but holy shit. 6 years. If you're hearing a noise, I think it's the power steering pump is low. It's coming from the belt area. I can't believe it. 6 years it hasn't ran. All right, I realized I had gotten too excited and I left the mic on my shirt rather than handing it over to you guys so you can listen to the startup. So let me do another startup. I also just ran to the auto parts store and grabbed a bottle of ATF. That's what's recommended for the power steering pump. So I just filled that and we'll see if that solved that issue as well. I still can't believe this thing starts and idles. So last time I started, I was getting kind of like a rattling noise around here. It looked like it was coming from the power steering pump. My reservoir was completely empty, so I just topped that off and that sound is gone. This thing sounds super smooth. I created this board the other day as a checklist to give me some ideas of what I want to do with the MAZDASPEED. Given with the progress that we've done in this video, pretty much check all these off now. All packed. That being the main win right there. So if you're wondering what's next for the MAZDASPEED, what I have here on the list, go through the interior. I want to really detail the interior, refurbish the headlights and taillights. Headlights and taillights are all hazy and I'm not sure if I just want to sand and re-clear them or possibly open them up and do some custom work inside them. The Mazda definitely needs new tires and I want to remove all this bubbly tint. So in the next video, this will be some of what I'll be working on there. Further down the line, future modifications I want to do to the MAZDASPEED. If you guys want to see something specific, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I want to hear all your input and we can build this thing together. I still can't believe after 6 years, finally got this thing to start and run. Something as simple as just timing. I just been putting it off because it felt like a lot of work, but once you commit to it and get down into it, it didn't take any time at all. I can't believe it took me this long, but I am so pumped that this thing finally runs and I can finally start to build this thing and turn it into what I've been envisioning for the last 6 years. I want to thank all of you for joining me as I learned to work on this car and diagnose issues that I've been having. And if you made it to the end, I really appreciate your viewership. Getting this car running is just the very beginning of this journey of creating the MAZDASPEED 3 that I've always wanted. And I hope that you all will follow me on my journey and we can build this together with your input. output. If you like what I'm doing here and you can share my vision and passion, I'd really appreciate if you like and subscribe. And if you don't like what I'm doing here, please leave a comment and let me know what I can do better. I want to share my passion with all of you the best way that I possibly can. So with all that said, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.